The jungle was alive with the hiss of unseen predators and the rustle of thick, alien foliage. But none of it mattered. John Wilder, Jax, didn't hear it. He'd learned to ignore the alien sounds, the low hums of bioluminescent trees, the squawk of things that crawled and crept through the shadows. His senses were locked on the one thing that mattered: the hunt. He was the hunter now. He crouched low, muscles tense, his breath barely a whisper. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but his focus never wavered. The gravity on Veketh was heavier than Earth's, but his body had adapted, his every movement precise, calculated. The air smelled of decay, of something ancient, as though the planet had been forgotten by time itself. Every corner of this world felt hostile. Every leaf, every vine seemed to hold a threat. But that's how Jax liked it. He thrived in the chaos of the unknown. There was no room for hesitation, no time for fear. Not when you were being hunted by creatures who could smell the fear in your sweat. They'll think they've got me now, Jax thought, a grim smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He knew how they worked. The RHA tier, mercenaries from a dozen different star systems, relentless hunters with a reputation. At first, they'd underestimated him. Humans are too soft to survive here, they'd thought. But after 2 days of relentless pursuit, they'd learned their mistake. Now they were in his world. He slinked through the dense jungle, his body molded to the shadows. His military-grade camo worked flawlessly against the glowing flora around him. The RHA tier had no idea he was right above them, nestled in the branches of a massive alien tree. From this vantage point, he could see the faint outline of their silhouette, a group of 4, their tall, lithe figures moving with predatory grace. Their black exosuits glimmered in the low light, their mandibles twitching with excitement. Jax's fingers tightened around the stock of his sniper rifle, the cold metal pressing against his gloved hands. He inhaled slowly, letting the moment stretch. His heartbeat was steady, calm, but beneath the surface, he could feel the tension building. He knew how this would play out. Stay focused, he muttered under his breath, though there was no one there to hear it. A mantra he'd learned to repeat in his head, drilled into him by years of Special Forces training. Every decision, every shot, had to be deliberate. He'd make them regret chasing him. That's what they didn't understand. Humans didn't just survive when hunted. They fought back. His target came into view. A RHA tier hunter, tall, with a muscular build that made even the towering trees look small, paused underneath the tree he was perched in, scanning the area with infrared vision. He was too focused, too certain. Perfect. Jax's finger brushed the trigger. He held his breath, waiting for the perfect shot. The crosshairs lined up perfectly on the hunter's exposed neck. A slight adjustment and he would drop like a stone. But then, a voice crackled through his comms, pulling him from the moment. "Don't screw this up. You know what's at stake." The voice was familiar. It was Echo, his old commanding officer. Jax didn't respond, but the words hit harder than they should have. The mission was no longer just about survival. It was about proving something. Not just to the RHA tier, but to himself. "Roger that," Jax said, his voice cold like the barrel of his rifle. He exhaled, steadying his aim. The moment stretched in silence. The hunter below shifted slightly, and that was all it took. Bang! The crack of the rifle shattered the stillness. The RHA tier hunter crumpled to the ground, his blood staining the alien soil beneath him. Jax immediately shifted position, leaping from the tree in one smooth motion, landing silently in the underbrush. He moved like a shadow, knowing the others would be on high alert now. The RHA tier didn't make mistakes like this. They would know he was out there, but they wouldn't know where. The jungle seemed to close in around him as he sprinted, pushing through thick vines and bramble that tugged at his clothes and scratched at his skin. His thoughts were clear, focused. They'll be more careful now. They'll adjust their strategy. But I know how they think. The moment of triumph was short-lived. Jax was still deep in enemy territory, and the others were already hunting him again. They'd be faster now. They'd know how to cover their weaknesses, and they'd adapt. His muscles burned, but his mind was sharp. His training kicked in. Every movement felt like instinct, each footfall precise. This was his world now, not theirs. Ahead, the jungle opened up into a clearing, and Jax took a moment to catch his breath. He peered out from behind a thick tree, scanning the area. The RHA tier were still out there, 3 left. And they were angry. "I know you're out there, human," a voice crackled through his earpiece. The voice was distorted, but Jax could still make out the deep, gravelly tone. It was the RHA tier leader, Taranak, a tall and imposing figure with scars crisscrossing his face from countless battles. The sound of his voice sent a chill down Jax's spine, but he pushed the feeling away. Taranak was cunning, ruthless. But Jax knew the leader's arrogance would be his downfall. He had already underestimated humans once. It would cost him. "I'm right here, Taranak," Jax whispered to himself, his lips curling into a predatory grin. "Just keep looking." He turned his back to the clearing and ducked into a shadowed corridor formed by giant, twisting roots that stretched across the ground. The vines here were thick, and Jax used them to his advantage, pulling himself deeper into the jungle, knowing the next few days would be the hardest of his life. But Jax didn't fear the RHA tier. What he feared was failure. He couldn't afford to lose. Not after everything he had already sacrificed. The hunt is on, he thought, his heartbeat steady in the face of the coming storm. But this time, I'm the one doing the chasing. The RHA tier would learn soon enough. Humans weren't just survivors. We were predators. The jungle was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Jax's boots sank into the soft earth, every step measured, deliberate. The air felt thick, almost oppressive, like the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But Jax had long learned to expect this kind of silence after a kill. The predators would be watching him now, waiting for the next move. They had to. The RHA tier were hunters by nature, and every one of them would have sensed the death of their comrade. He took a slow breath, tasting the acrid tang of alien flora. His skin still felt slick with sweat, but the tension in his muscles had subsided. He'd pulled off the first shot, but now came the real test. They'll be hunting me harder now, he thought. No more mistakes. A faint movement caught his eye. A flicker of shadow. Jax's hand tightened on the rifle's grip, his finger resting just shy of the trigger. He hadn't seen anything, but his instincts told him they were close. The thick vines surrounding him swayed in a soft, unseen breeze, their tendrils twisting as though alive. He could hear the faint scurrying of small, unseen creatures. Something was out there, but it wasn't the RHA tier. The tension in the air only seemed to build, each moment stretching like a rubber band about to snap. His thoughts drifted briefly to Earth, to the days when his life had been more predictable, when survival didn't mean being hunted across a hostile planet. I should have never volunteered for this mission, he thought bitterly. But here I am. It's too late to back out now. A whisper of motion, barely perceptible. Jax froze. There. His pulse quickened as a silhouette slid into view. Tall, muscular, one of the RHA tier. This one wasn't wearing the usual armor. Instead, he was cloaked in a reflective, metallic substance that shimmered against the jungle's fluorescent glow, blending seamlessly with his surroundings. They've adapted, Jax realized with a slight grimace. The cloaking tech was an improvement. The RHA tier leader, Taranak, would have been the one to make that decision. They know what I'm capable of. They're not taking chances anymore. The hunter, RHA tier number 2, moved cautiously, scanning the trees around him. His mandibles clicked, tasting the air. Jax could feel the intensity of his focus. This RHA tier was smart. Too smart for his own good. And he was making one mistake. He was alone. Jax's eyes narrowed, his mind calculating the possibilities in an instant. They think I'm somewhere over there. His gaze darted toward a copse of bushes where he'd intentionally left a trail of broken leaves and crushed branches. It was a trap. The RHA tier had to know that. He smiled. It was time. In one fluid motion, Jax leapt to his feet and broke into a sprint, darting through the jungle with speed and precision. The RHA tier hunter's head snapped toward the sound, his weapon, an energy rifle, already raised. He was quick, but Jax was quicker. He ducked beneath a thick, drooping vine and used it to propel himself forward, launching over a boulder to land silently in a shadowed alcove. Come on, Jax's mind raced as his heart pounded. The adrenaline hit him like a freight train, sharp and focused. He reached up, adjusting his sniper rifle as the hunter took the bait, stepping closer to the bushes where Jax had left the foe trail. The RHA tier's cloak shimmered as he stepped closer, unaware that the predator was now the prey. Got you, Jax whispered under his breath, his voice calm but with a cold undertone of confidence. His finger hovered over the trigger. Then, he hesitated. A low sound like a growl rumbled through the jungle. Jax's instincts flared, his senses alight. The hunter wasn't alone. It was a distraction. He didn't have to look to know there were two more closing in from his left and right, circling him. Shit! The word escaped his lips, a grim realization dawning. He was trapped. The jungle no longer felt like an ally, it was a labyrinth. The trees closed in, and the vines seemed to twist and stretch like living things, constricting his movements. Panic surged through him, but he locked it away with years of training. Stay calm. Think. He took a deep breath, his finger twitching on the trigger as the world slowed down. The RHA tier hunter in his sights was still oblivious to the other two. Jax made a split-second decision. He dropped his rifle, silently unsheathing his combat knife. The RHA tier were tough, but they weren't invincible. And now they were making one fatal mistake. They were getting too close. They thought they had him. But Jax had the advantage. He had been training for this his whole life. The first RHA tier hunter lunged, his eyes narrowing as his weapon crackled to life. Jax darted forward, spinning to the side as the bolt of energy grazed his arm. The burn seared through his suit, but the pain was nothing. He had been through worse. His fist drove into the RHA tier's side, knocking the wind out of him. Jax's knife found its mark with deadly precision, slicing through the alien's thin, armored side. The hunter let out a strangled gasp as his glowing eyes dimmed. One down, Jax muttered. The remaining two RHA tier charged at him, their weapons raised. Jax's blood was pumping in his ears now, and every movement felt like it was happening in slow motion. He ducked beneath another energy blast and used the jungle's uneven terrain to his advantage, pushing off a nearby tree to launch himself into the air. He landed behind the second RHA tier, his elbow driving into the alien's throat, cutting off the scream that might have alerted the others. As the second hunter crumpled to the ground, Jax didn't hesitate. The final RHA tier spun, eyes wide, realizing too late that he was facing the last of them. Jax didn't even flinch. His knife was already in motion, the blade cutting through the air in an arc that would have been impossible for most. The last RHA tier fell, his blood dark against the silver foliage of the jungle floor. Jax stood, breathing heavily, surveying the carnage. His chest heaved, and the adrenaline rush started to fade, leaving a hollow exhaustion in its wake. But even as his mind screamed at him to rest, his focus never wavered. This wasn't over. The leader, Taranak, was still out there, and he'd be expecting this. Jax kneeled beside the bodies of the fallen RHA tier, his hand brushing the smooth surface of the cloak one had worn. A mistake, he thought, his teeth gritted. They got careless. Now, he thought, a grim smile creeping across his face. It's time to take the fight to them. The jungle was alive with the buzz of unseen creatures, their alien calls echoing through the thick foliage like whispers from another world. The air was dense with humidity, clinging to Jax's skin as though the very atmosphere was trying to suffocate him. Each breath tasted of dirt and decay, the lingering remnants of a centuries-old battlefield. He moved through it like a shadow, silent, deliberate, his body alert, senses straining for the smallest sign of movement. The Rha were on the hunt again. Jax could feel them now, more of them, lurking just beyond the trees. He could hear their breath, low and steady like the hum of a predator stalking its prey. He couldn't see them, but they were there. And they're getting better at this, he thought with grim resolve. But so am I. His fingers clenched around his rifle, its weight comforting in his hands. The hum of its systems thrummed softly beneath his fingertips. Keep your distance. Play the game. The words were a mantra, drilled into him over years of training. Stay one step ahead. The Rha had underestimated him once. He had made them pay for that. But the hunter had become the hunted. A sharp crack of a twig snapped his attention to the left. His eyes darted to the source, the muscles in his legs coiling, ready to spring. There. A flash of movement, just a shadow against the trees. One of them. He couldn't tell which, but it didn't matter. His fingers tightened on the rifle's trigger guard, ready to fire at the first sign of vulnerability. But there was something else now. Something deeper. A shift in the air, like a gathering storm. It was subtle, but Jax had spent enough time in the wild to know that when everything felt just a little too still, it meant danger. They're closing in. The leader must have arrived. A deep, throaty growl pierced the silence, a sound that made Jax's blood run cold. It wasn't the typical screech of the Rha. It was something lower, more primal, and it came from everywhere at once. His breath caught in his chest as the realization hit him. Taranak, the Rha leader, had arrived. Jax didn't wait. He darted to the side, sprinting toward the thick underbrush that offered some semblance of cover. His heart raced, but his mind was sharp, every movement calculated. He wasn't about to be caught in the open again. Think, think, think. His mind raced, the scent of burnt ozone filling the air as an energy blast sizzled by, narrowly missing his shoulder. Jax threw himself to the ground, rolling beneath a large fern to keep his body concealed. The brush above him trembled from the force of the shot, the leaves rustling like a silent warning. They were close, too close. Taranak was known for his cunning. His pack wasn't like the others. They were organized, strategic. Jax could already feel the pressure building as the Rha spread out in a widening arc, slowly closing in on his position. The jungle wasn't his ally anymore. It was becoming a trap. You're a dead man, human. A voice rumbled from somewhere behind him, its tone cold and mocking. Jax's pulse quickened. He recognized it immediately. It was Taranak's voice, deep, rich with authority, and dripping with a sense of inevitability. Jax clenched his jaw, fighting the instinct to look around. He couldn't afford to give himself away, not yet. Do you think you can hide forever? Taranak continued, his voice vibrating through the trees, making the very ground beneath Jax's feet feel unstable. You may have killed my hunters, but you cannot hide from me. I have killed far more worthy opponents than you, little human. Jax swallowed hard. I can't let him get inside my head. Stay focused. Breathe. You can run, but you will never escape, Taranak's voice said again, now a low rumble that seemed to come from every direction. Jax's heart skipped a beat. They were surrounding him. Jax's hand slid down to the pouch on his belt, his fingers brushing the cold metal of his last grenade. His eyes flickered to the side. The trees were beginning to thin out. If he could make it to the clearing ahead, he could make his move. But first, he needed to make sure they didn't get the drop on him. Taranak's growl rippled through the undergrowth like a wave, growing louder. The hunter was closing in. Jax took a steadying breath, making sure his movements were deliberate as he crawled out from under the fern, moving with the smoothness of a predator in the dark. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the area. The trees to the left. I can make a break for it. A branch snapped. The sound was deafening in the silence. Jax's head jerked up. Too late. He wasn't alone anymore. From the shadows of the trees, Taranak emerged. The Rha leader stood tall, massive, armored, his body covered in shimmering scales that reflected the dim light like polished obsidian. His eyes were glowing a fierce, unnatural red, and his mandibles clicked in slow anticipation. He was a beast, a force of nature. "You think you can outwit me, human?" Taranak's voice was low, dripping with amusement. "You're nothing but a little insect in my jungle. But I will enjoy hunting you." Jax's heart thundered in his chest, but he remained still, his mind working a mile a minute. Taranak was standing only a few meters away now, his massive form blocking out the rest of the jungle. Jax's hand slid to his rifle, his eyes never leaving the leaders. He knew this would be the moment where he either died or took Taranak's head. "Come then," Jax whispered to himself, his voice almost lost in the rising tension. "Let's see who's the predator and who's the prey." With a sudden, explosive burst of movement, Jax sprang from his crouch, throwing the grenade toward Taranak's feet in one smooth motion. It exploded with a deafening crack, sending the jungle into chaos. In that moment, everything seemed to slow. The RHA tier leader stumbled backward, his powerful frame thrown off balance by the explosion. Jax didn't wait. He was already on the move, darting through the smoke and the dust, running toward the clearing ahead. He could hear Taranak's roar of fury as the RHA tier leader struggled to regain his footing, his warriors scattering in confusion. Jax's legs burned as he ran, adrenaline pumping through his veins. No time to waste. If I can get to that clearing, if I can get one shot, just one shot. The world around him exploded into chaos as he raced forward, the jungle now a blur of shapes and colors. Behind him, Taranak's voice screamed orders to his warriors, but Jax was already beyond the point of no return. And he wasn't about to stop. Jax didn't stop running. His breath came in sharp bursts, his legs ached with the effort, but there was no time to slow down. The clearing was close. He could almost see it through the thick, swaying trunks of the ancient trees ahead. The RHA tier would be upon him any moment now, but he couldn't afford to turn and look back. They'd found their pace. He could hear the pounding of their feet, the screeches of their breathing echoing in the space between trees. They were close. Too close. Focus, Jax. Focus. He ignored the burning in his chest as he pushed himself harder. His boots splashed through a thick stream, mud rising like quicksand to pull at his legs, but he powered through it. This was nothing compared to the fire of the last few hours. He could feel his adrenaline masking the pain, but deep down, he knew it would catch up with him soon. Behind him, the rumble of Taranak's voice echoed through the jungle, harsh, guttural syllables carried on the wind, demanding his warriors spread out. He was angry, and that made him dangerous. Jax's stomach twisted. The leader's learning. They're not just hunting me. They're hunting my mind. The clearing was closer now, the trees thinning to make way for a patch of dry land. The edge of the jungle, where open sky met thick foliage. But the moment he reached it, there would be no turning back. Jax's heart raced as he glanced sideways, his eyes scanning the underbrush. Not yet, not yet. He was almost there, his breath ragged, sweat slicking his brow, and then, snap. A string pulled taut across the path before him, a hair-thin tripwire that whipped violently as Jax's foot caught it. But it wasn't the wire that made his heart stop, it was the sudden click, the unmistakable sound of a trigger being pulled. Before he could react, a massive explosion ripped through the ground ahead of him, the shock wave sending him sprawling forward, his body tumbling over the ground, his ears ringing with the deafening blast. Smoke and dust filled the air, stinging his eyes, and for a moment, Jax couldn't hear anything except the pounding of his pulse in his head. Shit. He struggled to his feet, hands shaking as he wiped the grit from his eyes. His legs were unsteady, the world around him spinning. The explosion had left a crater in the ground, jagged rocks and splintered trees scattered like the remnants of a battle that had already been won. This is a trap. Jax's stomach sank. The clearing ahead had been a lie. Taranak had anticipated his every move. They'd known he was going to escape into the open. They'd laid the trap the moment he'd left cover. "I see you," Taranak's voice boomed from somewhere behind the dust and debris, like a predator who had just cornered its prey. "You can run, but you cannot hide. You will die here, human. Just as I promised." The words sent a chill down Jax's spine, but he didn't hesitate. His hand instinctively reached for his last grenade. He was down to his last resort. If he didn't act fast, he would never get another chance. The jungle around him seemed to close in. There were no more options for retreat. He was running out of time. "You think you can play this game with me?" Taranak's voice carried through the chaos, mocking, but tinged with something far darker now. A promise of inevitability. "I have killed better than you. Your tricks will not save you." Jax's pulse quickened, but his mind was calm. Calm. "Keep it together." He twisted his body toward a nearby rock outcropping, his hand throwing the grenade in a sharp arc toward the base of it. The explosion, when it hit, would send debris in every direction. It wasn't just a diversion, it was the only way to get some space. The sound of Taranak's laughter rang through the clearing, louder than before. Pathetic. Jax didn't wait. He darted for cover, his movements fluid as he slid behind a large, jagged stone just as the grenade went off. Dust flew in every direction, and for a second, the world became a blur of motion, heat, and noise. He ducked low, keeping his body pressed against the cold stone, his breath shallow, praying it would be enough. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement, dark shadows against the smoke. The Rha tier were regrouping. Taranak was not far behind. "Get moving, Jax. Think. Plan." There was a glimmer of something in the distance. A dark shape moving too smoothly to be anything other than Taranak. He was coming straight for him. And that meant, now or never. Jax pulled a flash charge from his belt. Not enough time to think. Just act. He threw the charge at the base of the stone and jumped up in the same instant. The blast of light was blinding. It cut through the smoke and debris, a burst of white that seared into his vision. He could feel the heat against his skin, the disorienting ring of it filling his ears as the world went silent for a heartbeat. "Come on." With his heart racing, Jax charged forward, weapon raised. Taranak was disoriented. He had been momentarily blinded by the flash, his large form now lurching into the open ground. It was the only chance Jax would get. But then, from behind, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Jax spun instinctively, a sinking feeling settling in his gut. The Rha tier had flanked him. Another figure appeared from the smoke, moving with lightning speed. Smaller than Taranak, but still deadly. It was one of his hunters, the same one who had been trailing him all along. No, not just one. Two more of them emerged from the jungle, their eyes glowing like predators on the prowl. The trap had been set from the beginning. They were ready. "I can't take them all." But there was no choice. Jax's breath caught in his throat as Taranak's voice rang out, low and predatory, filled with smug triumph. "I told you that you would die here. You are no more than prey to me, human." Jax's pulse hammered in his ears, his body coiled for action. There was only one chance left now. To fight, to outthink, and to survive long enough to find a way to break the cycle. And there, in the chaos of the moment, Jax made a decision. "I will not die here." The jungle had fallen silent, save for the sound of Jax's breath, ragged, sharp, and desperate. He crouched low behind a cluster of boulders, his hand trembling as it clutched his rifle, the only tool left to him. His back was pressed against the cold stone, every nerve in his body strung tight, as if he were one breath away from shattering. The world around him pulsed with the slow hum of an impending storm, his storm. Taranak and his hunters are closing in. They know where I am. They're just waiting for me to make a mistake. Jax didn't dare move. Every muscle in his body was screaming at him to act, to fight back, to take the war to them. But his mind, honed by years of military experience, knew better. A snap decision here would get him killed. He needed a plan. If they move in too quickly, I'm done. But if I wait too long, they'll corner me completely. He heard the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps moving through the underbrush, soft, deliberate, measured. Taranak was getting closer. Damn it. The tall, imposing RHA tier leader was too close for comfort now. His hulking figure loomed over the edge of the clearing, a predator's silhouette cut against the pale light of the moon that barely peeked through the thick canopy above. His voice, a deep, guttural growl, cut through the quiet. He's here. He has to be. Search the perimeter, now. Jax's heart stuttered in his chest, but he couldn't allow himself to panic. Focus. Stay calm. A soft rustle came from behind him, and he immediately turned his head, his hand tightening on his rifle's grip. It was the smallest of the RHA tier, the one he had caught a glimpse of earlier, slender and quick. It was her, the one who had nearly caught him in the trap earlier. Her eyes were bright and feral, scanning the area for any sign of movement. Jax held his breath, his entire body frozen, hoping she wouldn't see him. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, with the precision of a hunter who had been trained in the art of the chase, the RHA tier snapped her gaze directly to his position. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Her lips curled into a grin, sharp and knowing. She was the hunter, and he was the prey. "Found you," she whispered, barely more than a hiss. Jax's blood ran cold, but there was no time to waste. He swung into motion, his body springing from behind the boulders, his rifle raised. There was no more room for hesitation. The gunfire was deafening, a sharp crack that shattered the stillness of the night. The RHA tier hunter flinched, her arm catching the brunt of the shot. She staggered back, but she didn't fall. Not yet. "You can't run forever, human," she growled, her voice full of venom. "Your scent is everywhere." But Jax didn't stay to hear her taunt. He sprinted, his legs moving before his mind could catch up. The jungle blurred around him. He didn't care where he was going, as long as he was going away from the hunters. His heartbeat pounded in his chest, matching the rhythm of his boots slamming into the earth beneath him. In the distance, he heard Taranak's voice rise above the others, commanding his hunters to converge on his position. Jax's mind raced. Not good. Not good at all. There was a small chance, a fleeting one, that he could make it to the edge of the jungle, to the open field beyond, where he could see the stars, where he could, no. He couldn't risk the open space. It would leave him exposed. Think. Jax's gaze darted wildly around, his eyes landing on a narrow ravine to his right. It was his only option. The sides were steep, almost vertical in places, but he could use it to get the upper hand. Without thinking, he made for the ravine, his body pushing harder, faster. Behind him, the RHA tier hunters followed, relentless, but Jax was used to being hunted. He had learned every trick, every tactic of survival, and now it was time to put them all to use. He reached the ravine's edge and jumped, his feet slipping slightly on the loose rock. He managed to dig his fingers into the cliff face, using his legs to push his body upward, gritting his teeth against the strain. His body screamed in protest, but he didn't stop. Keep climbing, keep climbing. He heard the hunters below, closing in. Their voices echoed off the walls of the ravine as they searched for him. "Where is he?" Taranak barked. "Find him. Don't let him escape." Jax's body ached. His head throbbed from the effort, but the top was close, so close. He could taste the air, rich with the scent of the earth and the damp jungle, and it tasted like freedom. Finally, his hands broke the edge of the ravine, and he pulled himself over the lip, collapsing onto solid ground. His chest heaved as he lay there for a moment, catching his breath. But there was no time to rest. He had to move. Now. The sound of feet scrambling from below told him his pursuers weren't far behind. His eyes darted around, searching for any way to put some distance between him and the RHA tier. There was nothing here but an open expanse of rocky terrain, and then, forest. It was then that he heard the whistle. It wasn't the soft rustle of a hunter moving in the bushes. No. This was different. It was too sharp, too quick. A signal. Before Jax could react, the ground beneath him exploded in a shower of dirt and rock. A bomb. His body was thrown to the side, the shock wave cracking through his ribs, and for a moment, he lost all sense of time. His world spun, a blur of pain, disorientation, and heat. He hit the ground hard, his limbs splayed out as dust and smoke filled the air. The ringing in his ears was deafening, but as he staggered to his feet, the reality of the situation crashed over him like a wave. Taranak was standing at the edge of the clearing, his figure outlined by the fire from the explosion. His chest heaved, his hands clenched into fists. "I have you now, human." Jax's vision swam, but he wasn't done yet. His heart pounded in his ears, drowning out the world around him. His hands, shaking, fumbled for his final weapon, an EMP grenade he had kept hidden in his pack. He had one last chance. Taranak's voice rumbled with satisfaction, but Jax didn't wait. He pulled the pin and hurled the grenade, the flashing light catching the RHA tier leader off guard. The blast was immediate. The EMP slammed into Taranak's shields, the field sputtering and flickering before going out entirely. Jax surged forward, rifle raised. In a split second, he fired. Taranak's expression twisted into disbelief as he crumpled to the ground, the weight of his arrogance finally catching up with him. Jax didn't stop. He turned and ran, forcing his legs to move, ignoring the pain in his body, ignoring the exhaustion gnawing at him. There was still time. But one thing was clear: the hunt had just begun.